legislative proposals?
Well, our major proposals, I would say, of course we have several, but the ones that are most important as far as revenue is concerned would be for the legislature to permit the counties, the county council, to impose a 1% surtax on the sales tax to be collected by the state and returned to the county and distributed on a population basis to the cities and towns and the county civil government. The second measure would be to increase the cigarette tax by 2 cents, and this would be earmarked for local police and fire pension funds. Our actuarial report showed us that presently it costs about $12 million a year to fund the current police and fire pensions, and in 20 years it's going to cost about $45 million. And we feel that this is too much of a burden on property tax, and that we ought to use some of the luxury tax, a tax that people don't have to pay, to help pay these police and fire pensions.
You think this is the most practical approach to the problem?
Well, I think this is one of the most practical approaches. I think that cigarettes cause, my national statistics show they cause 30-35% of the fires. The police and fire have a good deal to do with fires when they occur, and I think that to help fund their pensions, this is a proper use of cigarette tax money.
Thank you. Mayor Hayes, what has been the reaction to this proposal? You had today a group of state legislators elect, you had mayors, and you had city councilmen in your audience. What is their reaction?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the reaction of the legislators who were present is favorable. That is, and it is based on their realization that the people of Indiana, the taxpayers of Indiana, have approached really their limit of tolerance for raises in property tax. And one of the primary functions of this legislature, one of the biggest jobs it'll have and most difficult, is to find alternatives for the funding of all the needs in the state, local and state, to the property tax. These proposals that we are going to offer to the legislature, the increase in the cigarette tax, the surtax on the sales tax for distribution back to cities and towns, are not the only ones we are going to propose. We also are going to propose an increase in and a greater distribution back to cities and towns of the sales tax itself and the adjusted gross income tax.
How do you reconcile this with the fact that Governor Whitcomb has threatened to veto any increase in taxes? Has he given you any assurance that he would allow this?
He has said that he would not oppose an increase in the sales tax for this purpose, or rather the cigarette tax for this purpose, for assistance to cities and towns, nor would he oppose the authority to cities and towns to levy a tax of their own, a local tax, a surtax on the sales tax. But he has said that he would oppose, and in fact would veto, any increase in the sales tax or in the individual gross income tax.
If you get this through the legislature, you'll have no opposition from the governor.
If we get, the governor won't oppose us, I understand from what he has said, or oppose the legislature or veto an increase in the cigarette tax or an authorization to cities and towns to impose their own taxes. We don't expect any opposition there. We do expect his opposition, however, to another part of our program, which is an increase in and additional distribution of the gross income tax and adjusted gross and sales tax to cities and towns.
Do you think you could get enough support in the legislature to override a governor veto?
I hesitate to say. I don't want to, at this stage, this far ahead of the legislature, to say with assurance whether I think we can muster enough support to overcome a governor's veto. But I will say that, again, that the legislators are going to be faced with enormous pressures, not just from cities and towns by any means, but from schools, from the universities, from things like mental health, just from things like inflation, to find alternatives to the property tax, and I just don't see where they're going to find these alternatives except in increasing the state-collected taxes that have such a broad base, like the sales tax and the adjusted gross income tax.